Round one, fight!
Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode. On today's show, we're going to be taking a look at Street Fighter the movie across various platforms of its release. The first being the arcade version, which came out in 1995 and was developed by Incredible Technologies and published by Capcom. The arcade and console versions of Street Fighter the movie are actually two very different games. The first, as I had said before, in the arcade, which was developed by Incredible Technologies, was also the same group of people that put together Time Killers and Bloodstorm, if you remember those arcade games. This one has its own unique game engine, complete with an insane combo system full of juggles and whatnot. It's also got a pretty good amount of hidden secrets here that are a lot of fun to try and dig up. There's a really interesting forum thread out there where one of the lead developers of Street Fighter the movie details the process of creating the game, and let me tell you, it was quite an adventure. I'll put a link to that thread in the description for you guys that are interested in more history of the arcade game. Outside of the standard arcade mode, you can also put in another code at the character select screen to enable tag. Tag in this game works sort of like King of Fighters in that once one character is defeated, the second one jumps in to continue the fight. There are 14 total selectable characters in this version of the game, and a few hidden ones as well, but most of these are just color swaps of the Blade character. The arcade version's gameplay is totally nuts. It's really, really fast, and you do have a super meter a la Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Each of the selectable characters has two super moves, one that'll leave a red shadow behind it, and the other one that will leave a blue. This is just mainly for decoration. It doesn't actually mean anything as far as the power level of the actual move goes. There are also new moves called comeback moves, which are basically like a quick punish, interrupt moves, and all sorts of throw cancels and counters. Though the characters are large and they animate really well and quickly for a digitized fighting game, there's really not much going on with the backgrounds at all in this game. There aren't that many of them, although there are a couple hidden variations of them, but they're all kind of bland looking. The sound's pretty good, although it's another one of those arcade games where the sound effects themselves are really, really loud. This one obviously was trying to get people's attention back in the arcade days. The music here is pretty forgettable, but luckily you can put in codes at the Versus screen to enable some remixes of some of the classic tracks from Street Fighter 2, and that's awesome. So yeah, Street Fighter the movie in the arcade, it's a pretty weird game. It's definitely quirky, and it's fun. That's the thing. It's far from a good game, and there's not a whole lot going on here, but man, it is a lot of fun to go for some of those endless juggles and just take advantage of the wild combo system. Dragon! So now that we've taken the time to talk about the arcade version of Street Fighter the movie, let's go ahead and delve into the home ports, which were released the same year in November. Back in the day, I primarily played this game on the Sega Saturn, so that's the footage we're going to look at today, although I can assure you, as an owner of both versions of it, the PlayStation 1 version of Street Fighter the movie is essentially the exact same as the Sega Saturn. So this right here is the home version of Street Fighter the movie, and like I said, it's a very different game. This version of the game was actually developed and published by Capcom themselves, and essentially is like a remixed version of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Not that there's anything wrong with remixing Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, it is obviously one of the best games in the entire Street Fighter legacy, but as a kid in 1995, I was pretty disappointed that this was the home version of the game, since I really, really wanted to work on some of those crazy combos and whatnot from the arcade version that I didn't really see that often when I was out and about. The home ports contain pretty much the same roster of characters as the arcade version, with a couple of key differences. In the home ports, Akuma is still selectable, but acts as a hidden character. You actually have to put in a code at the select screen to enable him. DJ and Blanca are also available in the home version, and neither one of these two characters is playable in the arcade at all. So that's pretty cool that the home version gets a couple of exclusive characters, although when you look at them, the sprites themselves look kinda lazy and like they were thrown in at the last minute. As I had mentioned before, the gameplay in this one is almost identical to that of Super Street Fighter II Turbo, with a couple of little differences here and there. Some of the moves are obviously different, and the super bar acts a little bit different as well. Once it fills up, you can do your regular special attack, or you can again do EX versions of some specific moves. Like with Ryu and Ken, you can actually throw 2 fireballs or do an upgraded hurricane kick, etc. The neat thing about this is it doesn't actually use any of the bar, so once it's full, you can use them as much as you want until you pull off the actual super move that drains the bar. The music and sound effects are, for the most part, much better here. The backgrounds, in my opinion, are also a lot nicer and more finely detailed than its arcade counterpart. There are just more stages altogether with more things going on in the background, and it's kind of a trade-off really, because as you can see, the characters themselves don't move nearly as well as they do in the arcade version. There are a lot of frames of animation missing here. The characters definitely seem a bit more robotic, although it doesn't affect the gameplay at all. The game itself still plays really smooth. This version's arcade mode is actually retitled Street Battle, and the home port actually has a couple of new exclusive modes as well that are pretty cool. The movie mode will actually have you play through the plot of the film, and it has some cool branching paths that will allow you to take different routes and fight different characters to progress the story. There's a trial mode too, but it basically acts like survival mode, where you just fight a quick series of opponents all the way to the end, where Akuma ends up being the final boss. And there you have it, that's both versions of Street Fighter, the movie. And like I had said before, and I'm still kind of bummed, that there's never really been a proper re-release of the arcade version. Really, the only way you can even play that version is via emulation or by tracking down the arcade board, which I actually did. And let me tell you, the arcade board for Street Fighter the movie is very difficult to find. It took me months to track one down, and I couldn't even find one for sale at first. I ended up tracking down a guy that had a fully working copy of the board and then just had to negotiate with him until he eventually decided to sell it to me. I am glad he did though, because I've got a lot of really fond memories of this one from when I was a kid playing it in the arcade. And like I said, since there was no other version of it, I had always felt like playing the home version just didn't ever give me the same experience. So it's really cool to actually have it now and be able to play it whenever I want to. Even with that said though, both games are really kind of good, and both are fun sort of in their own way. The good news is even though the arcade version of the game is really tough to find, the home version isn't at all, and it's really reasonable price-wise, either on the PlayStation or the Saturn, although if I remember correctly, I believe the Saturn version is actually the cheaper one these days. Again, lots of folks bash on this one because it's one of those digitized games, and for the fact that it's based off of a movie which was, in all honesty, pretty terrible, and I think we can all agree there. But if you can look past that, the game is fun, and I definitely do recommend picking it up if you're a Street Fighter fan who's never gotten a chance to play this one. Nowadays, you can fire up the arcade game on MAME with little to no effort, so I definitely recommend doing that as well. Play both versions of it and let me know in the comments which one you prefer, or if you've already played them, let me know why you prefer one over the other. I'd be really interested to hear some of your responses. As always, guys, I'd like to thank you all for watching, subscribing, and of course commenting, and until next time, stay classic.
fighter.